Senator Kenywa, I overrule that it doesn't warrant being called a point of order. If you have a problem with language, I think you better go to a language class and not stand on a point of order. Senator Haron.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't wish to be drawn to the previous utterances. But just to say that as fathers in this house, we shall revisit at the right time. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, these are two very important petitions that have been brought before the House. First is a petition by Senator Mariam Sheikh on behalf of Mihango residents. Mr. Speaker, I know Mihango very well. I grew up not very far from there and perhaps played football as a young kid, very close to where Senator Mariam is speaking about. And to be in this house this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, it will be gross abuse of the premium position of privilege that I have as a member of parliament to just rant and say this is wrong, shouldn't have happened, and expect that things remain the same. Mr. Speaker, those that have been in this house, and including everybody that's here this afternoon, know that on more than one occasion, we have considered petitions on citizens that have been evicted from various properties. Many times, countless times, I have lost count. And we keep on sharing our rage. Then we go wash our hands, eat mandazi, and go home. That's not what we are paid to do as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. It will be great dereliction of duty if the committee responsible, the one that shall handle this petition, shall go, visit, listen, and just come back to this house with a report left out to gather dust in this house. I propose, Mr. Speaker, that this committee goes beyond the call of duty to not only just establish the truth on these residents, perhaps if KPLC will be found to be at fault, Mr. Speaker, first of all, impose a fine, and we have that responsibility. It's possible. We can give such directions, Mr. Speaker, and propose that they seek that the citizens actually be compensated. But over and above, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing is that can we come up with legislation, Mr. Speaker, on how to carry out evictions in this country, Mr. Speaker. We should go beyond just the collective rage as a house every other afternoon saying this was not done in a proper way. I believe that we can come up with a legislation that says even where there arises a dispute in a land between two parties, that this is a procedure that the police are supposed to follow. So that every other time we don't hear these stories that we keep on hearing that in the dead of the night people showed up in trucks, blah, 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 and the kind of things that we hear each and every other afternoon, Mr. Speaker. We need to bury that practice this session of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the committee that will be tasked with handling this petition, Mr. Speaker, will do us great justice, and they'll cover us with dignity as a House, Mr. Speaker, if they come back to us with a legislative proposal on evictions of members of the public on any disputed property, Mr. Speaker, so that we put it to an end. This does not require much thought to it, but lay out a procedure. I don't know which statute, although they will likely to amend public order or whatever, Mr. Speaker, but at least guide the country. It is clear that the reason why these violations continue to happen so many times, Mr. Speaker, is for want of good laws, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I believe that that will be good justice so that we never sit here on another afternoon, Mr. Speaker, to just lament and go and have mandazi and go home, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is a very interesting petition by Senator Hilary Sigei, which seems to have escaped the notice or the attention of many senators, because I've listened to most of my colleagues and they've only commented on the petition about evictions by KPLC. This is an interesting one, Mr. Speaker. You do know, Mr. Speaker, that global conglomerates are increasingly facing scrutiny either by parliaments or regulatory bodies in the countries within which they operate in, Mr. Speaker, for various malpractices, either in their accounting reporting or even in breach of data, and so many foul things that these institutions are found, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, or various breaches of the law, Mr. Speaker, that these multinationals are found to be in breach of, Mr. Speaker. You do know, Mr. Speaker, that presently in the European Parliament, there is a big fight between the Irish data regulator and Meta, the parent company that owns Facebook. And they have been fined over $1 billion just for breach of data, Mr. Speaker, for transferring data from European residents back to United States, Mr. Speaker. It points to the fact that citizens, regulatory bodies, parliaments are increasingly becoming aware to the evil practices of many of these multinationals that operate in countries other than their origin, with very little regard to the rule of law. I know this is a practice. It's not just EABL, as is being mentioned in this petition, Mr. Speaker. I know for a fact, when I read the tax records of KRA, Mr. Speaker, and you read about leading taxpayers, for example, you know that you'll find very small eco-lodges in Narok are paying more taxes than the people that run the huge multinational plantations back in Kericho, Mr. Speaker. It cannot make sense. It doesn't make sense, but because of exactly the same situation that is being described in that particular petition, Mr. Speaker, KRA are not able, Mr. Speaker, to follow through and ensure that the people that these institutions pay the taxes that are due of them, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, you know, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, because of the pettiness of the conversation around the finance bill of 2023, very important snippets and proposals that have come through after many years of conversations about what to do with such companies are missing out. In the finance bill of 2023, Mr. Speaker, you will find a repatriation tax proposal where it is now being proposed for these companies that repatriate profits out of Kenya that they first pay a local tax within their country where they apply their trade and practice. Because we pay police officers, we train their employees, they use our roads to run their trade, then they go and do their books in London and in all these other posh capitals of the world, paying very little taxes to this country, Mr. Speaker. I hope at least in the fullness of time, when the dust settles and we have an adult conversation about the proposals that are in the finance bill of 2023, at least that shall not be one of the proposals that will fall down, Mr. Speaker, because I know National Assembly, it's not the first time that this is being proposed, but you know, unfortunately, as a House, we do not have the powers to legislate on tax matters, Mr. Speaker, but at least we have a platform and the voice to speak on these particular issues. Therefore, we'll be watching with keen attention the proposals that will come from whichever committee will handle that petition on the practices of EABL, Mr. Speaker, that we are being invited to listen and learn from that citizen that has petitioned this House, Mr. Speaker. It's of great interest, Mr. Speaker, to note that while this citizen had the choice to take this petition either to the National Assembly or the Senate, they brought it here to the Senate. Maybe there's something they know about us as a House. Let us not kill the hopes that they have about us as a House, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr.